Hello, everyone. This is CJ, and this is a commentary reaction video to the teeth whitening video that you just saw of me performing the teeth whitening process. I do want to add in some additional color and commentary and provide some additional insights on different things that maybe I did incorrectly, and there are a few things that I caught even myself in going back and watching my own video. So I want to talk about that and then just really double down on some of the concepts that you learned through this course. So let's get started. Hey, come on in. You can have a seat right there. Welcome to All White Teeth. I am CJ. This is a consent form. It goes over a few things. You would print, sign. It talks about the fact that we are not a dentist office. We're a cosmetic whitening office. Any type of dental related questions you would have, unfortunately, I would not be able to address. However, my goal today is to help you get whiter and brighter. So that's what I'll be doing. The gel that's used is a hydrogen peroxide gel. It oxidizes and bleaches the stains off your teeth. I've never had anyone who's had an allergic reaction to the gel. However, you are acknowledging that it's always a possibility. During the session, if you feel a buildup of saliva in your mouth, it is perfectly fine to swallow. And the last thing is just to let me know if you have any type of bonding or crowns on the front of your teeth because they do whiten differently. All right, so we talked about this, and the consent form is very important, and also, in my opinion, the consent disclosure is very important as well. Why? Because it gives an overview. I noticed that when clients would come in and sign the consent, they would ask me specific questions, and I really wanted to create a script that prevented them almost from asking additional questions by just giving them an overview of the consent form. Of course, you still want them to read it, but at the same time, in this situation, I'm also articulating the fact that it is okay to swallow during the session and that they need to disclose if they have some type of bonding or crowns on the front of their teeth as well, so that I'll be ready to look at that once I do the stain assessment, the stain analysis. So once you've read over everything, just sign and date it at the bottom, and don't forget to print at the top, and I'll be with you in just a moment. All right, so I'll take that. So the first thing we're going to do is take a picture of your existing smile. So I'm going to have you come over here to this table and lay down, okay? Taking a picture of the smile is very important, of course, and it's going to take time for you to get it correctly. But I'll talk about that a little bit more, and I'm going to talk about why I uh, assessed this particular woman's stain level as I did compared to what you will see here on video. All right, big smile from me. All right, it looks like you've had some teeth whitening in the past. So you are going to be about uh, S20, S22 right now. So, okay, S20, S22. Where is that at? And I'm gonna just use my little zoom here. Zoom in, zoom in a little bit more. There we go. All right, so let's look at this here. Uh, S22 is about here. Now, based on how this looks on the camera, it looks like it's even much lighter than that. And that's true for these front teeth. What I'm looking at is the darkness on these side teeth. And then, to be honest with you as well, the lighting, the camera, so many different things goes into why it looks like it looks brighter on video. And that's one of the positive effects of teeth whitening is if someone's on video, FaceTime, their teeth are always going to look brighter than what the naked eye sees. And so the video sees one thing here when I see an S22, which is here, but I'm also looking at the darkest parts of her teeth and getting those whitest. So when doing a stain assessment, you definitely want to look at the darkest part of the teeth as well to make sure that it matches whatever is here, right? Get the stain chart to match the darkest part of the teeth, basically, the closest match. All right, let's keep going. So, take a picture of that. And one more time with the chart. All right. So you always want to take two pictures, one that you can post and then also one that shows the stain level compared to the chart. That's very important. That's something that I always do for before and after pictures. All right, so an S22 is going to be about here. All right, and you're doing a 60-minute session today, so it'll take you between 12 to 14 shades. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. So you should get about there today. Okay, so let's talk about what I did here with the whitening chart as well. So with the whitening chart, I started out, I picked that particular shade, which was like an S22, and I counted by twos up, and I give a range. And I talked about this in the lesson plan. I know what type of results my gel provides, the dual barrel hydrogen peroxide 35% gel. If you're using a different type of gel, you will have to learn what the average shade that a client will get to based on the time increments that you provide, whether it's a 20-minute session, a 40-minute session, or a 30-minute session, and a 60-minute session. You'll have to figure that out, and over time, just as you do, as you perform whitening on different clients, right? So you'll have to figure that out. If you are opting to use the 35% dual barrel as well, then great. Those are going to be your results for a 30 and a 60-minute session. For this case, this is a 60-minute session. And the level of whitening for that 60-minute session. Okay? All right, so I'm going to give you some shades to put on. I'm going to put my gloves on to get everything started. So just give me a few minutes, all right? All right, let's look at my tray really quickly. And so you'll see here that I have a few things out. Of course, I have a bottle of water and a sponge toothbrush that'll be used for the client to rinse out with and to brush off with, to brush the rest of the gel off with after the session. Once the session is over with, once the session is over with, I have two cotton rolls here and here. These will be used to wipe the gel off of the client's teeth, right? And this is after the first session. If they're doing two sessions, you're going to use this to wipe the gel off on the top and bottom teeth before a reapply. I have, of course, a Q-tip. I have the petroleum jelly as well. This will be used to lubricate the lips and also to help pry this cotton roll loose. So you will use the rest of this petroleum jelly to kind of lubricate the lips, to moisturize the lips, to get the cotton roll here from touching. I have also on this table, I'm not exactly sure why I put this extra cotton roll here. I think it was just to show you the full-length cotton roll and how I cut it into basically 2/3 and 1/3 sections. I believe that's why I put that there originally. I recorded this video months ago. Then we also have the teeth retractor as well. So we also have the cheek retractor here. And of course, that's going to open the cheeks wide and get the lips away from the teeth. We have the gingival here. and the tip. This is the oral syringe that the the whitening gel will be dispersed into. And we're never using the actual main syringe to apply the gel to the client because these tips here are very hard to find or they're very expensive, and it just doesn't make any sense to try to order these tips. It's always best to just use another oral syringe to disperse the gel actually onto the client's teeth, and for sanitary reasons as well. Go ahead and put those on for me. Oh, actually, let me give you these other ones to put on because you have eyelashes. I always want to make sure that we accommodate women with the lashes. So go ahead and put those on. That should work better for you. Okay, so yes, I have two types of shades. Um, Depending on your office, you could just carry these goggles, but these goggles are definitely very important if you have a clientele who has eyelashes. Otherwise, with those regular shades, your female clients are going to be adjusting the shades constantly throughout the session if they have lashes because the lashes are going to be rubbing up against the shades, of course. So definitely have some type of goggles that give space for any type of lashes or things like that. And put those on. That should work better for you. All right, good. And I'm just going to put my gloves on. All righty. So the first thing I'm going to do is put some Vaseline on your lips, even though it looks like you already have some. You just want to make sure these lips are extra moisturized because the light that shines on your lips is going to dry them out. So we just want to make sure they're extra moisturized. If you do feel like your lips are getting dry during the session, just let me know and I can put some more Vaseline on, okay? Now, what I didn't talk about in the lesson plan is there is the chance that the light will also tan the lips. So you will notice in after pictures in many instances where the light will make the especially bottom lip darker. And you could definitely change the orientation of the light a little bit. That's just something that is a byproduct of the whitening process. Uh, and it may be the petroleum jelly enhancing the tanning effect, but that petroleum jelly is definitely important to have, especially over vitamin E, just to prevent any type of issues around allergies, but to keep those lips moisturized, especially so that they don't dry out during the whitening session. All right. So this is a cheek retractor. This is going to open your lips up really wide. I'm going to slide it in like so. So open up for me. All right. And you heard here that I demonstrated sliding the retractor in. So I kind of made a hand motion to show them this is what I'm doing with it. So definitely you want to be cognizant of the fact that you want to explain every step to the client to make that person feel better and all of the actions that you're doing where there's you want to make sure that there's no sudden actions, sudden movements, things like that where they're like, hold on, what's going on? What are you doing? Explain all of your actions here. Don't close until I tell you to. Okay, so this is a technique that I've used, and this is something that you're just going to have to learn over time. But putting that cheek retractor in with one hand, I would say I can do that 60% of the time. The other 40% of the time, because of the way the client's mouth is shaped, I have to put one side in and then use the other hand to kind of turn it in and then pop it into the other side. If you find that the person, or if you find that the cheek retractor is slipping out of the person's mouth, when you try to pop this side in. So if you're right-handed, then you're using your left hand to pop this side in, or maybe if you're left-handed, you're popping that side in second and it's slipping out, then the retractor is too small. That means you need a super large, excuse me, that means you need a large retractor versus the normal sized or medium retractor. All right, you can close. Good. And I always do the squeezing at the end. It just gives an opportunity for the retractor to adjust correctly in the person's mouth. And it gives them a little bit of relief for a few seconds just to get their mouth used to the retractor. All right, so this is a cotton swab. This is going to slide your lip down, so keep your teeth closed. Now, before we jump into that, I want to address the elephant in the room here. There's a bib behind her head, but there's no bib across her chest. And in the lesson plan, and in this case, this is do as I say, not do as I do. uh, and I am used to performing a teeth whitening session mess free, not spilling anything, not getting anything on the client's clothes. Don't do this unless you're very comfortable, but as a new person, always put a bib down. Don't even if you take the bib up while the person is whitening, always put a bib down. And in this case, I will point out my own accountability, have accountability for my own actions, and say I should have put a bib down, especially in this instructional video. I'm just going to slide your lip down like so. I'm going to tuck this in like this. Good, good. Okay, so let's talk about this really quickly here. So this is the 2/3 section of the cotton roll being tucked down into the bottom. And this is perfect because this is not going to pop out of the person's mouth. It actually is tucked within the lips perfectly. The section of the cheek retractor is covering the cotton roll enough where it will keep it down. The problem is that you're going to run into clients whose lip is so far away from their gums that this retractor isn't going to properly keep this tucked down. And there's really nothing you can do about it except put a thick layer of gel here to adhere to the gums, and that will help push and keep the cotton roll down. But I had a client the other day, that person kept moving their lips and it pushed this back up. And halfway during the gel wipe off session, which is halfway through the 60-minute session, uh, I had to completely reapply a new layer of gingival and I had to insert a new cotton roll there. So you will run into those situations. Another thing is that if the person has very thin lips, so in that case, you would have to insert the cotton roll on top of the lip, where it spans on top of the lip, and it is literally sitting under the retractor right here and right here to help push the lip down away. And that's because that person's lips are so thin that physically the cotton roll won't fit there, but you always want to have a cotton roll, especially on that bottom section. In this top section, the way this is sitting, it has pushed her lips up high enough where technically you wouldn't need a cotton roll, and I talked about this in the lesson plan. However, it makes it more difficult to remove this top gingival if you leave the cotton roll out. So I always add the cotton roll in, even if it looks like the top lip will not touch the teeth, because you just want a situation where it's easier to pull that gingival out without having to use your nails or use anything else. Good, good. And this is a top one. I'm going to slide this at the top. All right, good. Actually, let's go back really quickly. All right, so inserting this top cotton roll, it takes practice. Sometimes you have to insert it and roll it, physically turn it so that it kind of slides in but keeps this section connected to the lip. Sometimes you have to physically pull up on the cheek retractor and push it in here while you're pulling up with one hand. There's a few different ways, of course, to do that. And it just takes practice. Good. All right. What am I doing here? First of all, I have touched the client's lips, so I use some hand sanitizer because now I'm going to touch the gingival. So the tip is going to be replaced, but this main syringe is not, right? This is going to be used with other clients. So I want to make sure that my hands are as germ free as possible before touching the syringe. Now, of course, we're going to wipe that syringe off again at the end just to make sure it's sanitized. But that's the main reason why, after touching the person's mouth or coming in contact with the person's mouth, I use hand sanitizer to make sure that my gloves are germ free before touching any of the other instruments here. All right, so I'm applying the tip there. So if this was a syringe that I have used with another client at some point, then there's a technique that I do where I push a little bit of the gel. Let's go back here. I push a little bit of the gel out onto the bib just to make sure that there isn't any hard gel on the tip. I would just kind of squeeze out a little bit and wipe it there, just because of the fact that if there is some hardened gel that's on the tip of this syringe, even with the cap on it, then it will clog up the nozzle here. So you just want to make sure that that nozzle tip isn't clogged up with any hard gel residues. So I always squeeze out a little bit on a previously if I'm using a previously used syringe. On a brand new syringe, as you can see, I just pulled the cap off, popped this on, and that was it, and we're ready to go. All right, so this is a gel that covers your gums, hardens, and protects your gums from touching the hydrogen peroxide gel. For some of my clients, when they rinse out at the end, sometimes they see a little whiteness on the edge of their gums. That's the result of the peroxide actually touching. So if you do see that when you're rinsing out at the end, don't try to scrub it off or anything. The whiteness goes away in about 30 minutes, okay? This disclosure is very important, very important. Why? Because no one is going to apply a gingival perfectly. There's always going to be that client once in a while, depending on how many clients you do, that will have blanching on their gums after the fact. And so when they see that, they're freaking out. They're like, "Oh my God, what is this?" And so they're using, whether it's a little mini toothbrush that you provided them with or oral sponge like I provide my clients, they're sitting there scrubbing, trying to get that off. And it will basically uh, break the gum, cause the gum to bleed, and you just don't want that. So you want to reassure the client of every expectation, you know, even after the session. And so providing these disclosures is something that's very important as part of this process. All right, so I'm going to start applying this at the bottom first. All right, so I want to show here that I'm squeezing with my right hand, but I'm literally pushing away from the client's mouth and providing a counterweight, counterbalance with my left hand. That is very important. Otherwise, if you just go in with one hand, your natural motion, the leaning, rocking of your body, movement of your hand is going to jab this metal tip into the person's gums, and you don't want that to happen. So that's one part of this. Let's keep going. Now, depending on your angle, as you can see here, and this is something that I've a technique that I have just because of my experience, where the gel, where the needle, where the tip is pointing directly at the gum. Best practice, depending on it, it just really depends on the angle, but best practice is to curve this uh, downward and to have there's a tip at the end of this that's a little flat here, or there's a section that curves down, and you'll see that there a little bit. But have that a majority of the actual syringe tip on over the teeth and the gel flowing over the gums. And you'll see that as I move up towards the top. But you know, everyone is going to develop their own technique, basically. But you want to, whatever the technique that is, it's just ensuring that you are protecting the tip from the gums of the client and not touching, scraping, coming in contact, prodding, or poking at the gums. All right, so I am just applying the gel all the way around here and just making sure that I double check my work. Now, this side here looks messy, but that's why it's important to come on to both sides so you can see
And
where
this is
you've
a light
missed.
that just cures the gel, makes it hard. I'm just going to let that sit there for a couple of seconds.
And all you really need is about 10 seconds, 15 seconds to set the gel and to make it hard. All right, so we're just covering the top. We're making sure that this gingival is touching this cotton roll. Why? Because you want it to adhere. So when you get ready to pull the cotton roll out, it pulls out the gingival as well. This is very important. And I talked about this earlier. And notice what I did here. I went all the way across at the bottom, but at the top, what did I do? I only did one section, one half. Why? Because if you try to do the top, because of gravity, it's going to pull that gel down. If you try to do the entire top at one time, it's going to be messy on this left-hand side if that's the side that you're starting on. Meaning the gingival is going to flow over onto the teeth, and then you're spending time trying to clean that up. So it's always best to do two sections at the top and one section at the bottom. And as you can see, just from this vantage view, being on the left-hand side of the client and trying to apply it, sometimes you can't even see this section here. So it's so important to come onto the right side of the bed to inspect your work. And so that's what I'll be doing. I've seen teeth whitening offices where this bed is pushed up against the wall. I just can't see. I can't understand how they're able to do that unless they're having the client to turn their head as well. I mean, that is always one possibility, but I always want to leave space for me to come onto both sides and inspect my work. And that's how you ensure minimal blanching. So if we can get the camera to focus, and I'm just going to zoom in here. And so you can see that I've fixed my work here, but let's look at how the gingival is applied here. And it's adhered to the braided cotton roll. So, it's pretty good work if I say so myself. It's thicker here, it's thinner here, and that's perfectly fine. There are times, depending on how the person's mouth is, how much gel you're putting on the teeth, sometimes the gel will create little gas bubbles that will irritate this section of the gum. So in this case, you will have to go back over your work. If the client is also complaining about irritation, you could also inject more gingival here and here and here to help to try to alleviate and try to catch any spots that you may have missed. Okay, so what I just did just now is I turned my head to the left and I actually looked up and under just to make sure that I didn't miss any spots on this side. Alrighty, so now I am preparing the gel. This is the dual barrel gel, and now I am going to dispense that into the oral syringe. And I go up to 2, so I leave 2 milliliters empty. In this case, so for this video, I was actually running out of gel, so this is another gel from another supplier that I'm mixing with this. So I'm filling it up to where the gel will reach the 2 milliliter mark. And then when you push this in, it pops it a little bit. So that's why, and if you look, oh, you can't see there now. Let's see. As soon as I pop it in, and you could barely see it there, it pushed some of the gel out. And I've had, because I distribute this gel, I've had other teeth whitening offices ask me about this procedure of dispersing the gel into an oral syringe. And one of the things you could do is you could use a larger oral syringe. You could use a 3 milliliter oral syringe instead of the 1 milliliter oral syringe. But the main thing is not to fill the syringe up with gel all the way. And that will prevent gel from popping out. And then also you have to slowly, it's like a clicking motion because, okay, you see the little rubber stopper there that's on the part that inserts into the oral syringe, it kind of clicks, and you have to finesse that through that clicking process so you don't push it too hard. Otherwise, if you push it too hard, then it will dispense more gel out of the tip when you push it in. Now, I did put my finger over this to kind of allow it to click also. That actually builds up pressure. I really don't suggest doing that because it builds up too much
All
pressure when
right,
you're
so I'm
pushing
gonna
it
start
in
applying the
and makes
whitening
it
gel
pops
now.
out.
All right, so I'm gonna start applying the whitening gel now.
All right, so we're getting good coverage here. One of the things that I wanted to point out is in the lesson plan, it mentions using a little brow brush as well to help cover this. Uh, and I talk about the fact that, practice makes perfect. I've learned how to just use the syringe to provide the coverage of the gel on the teeth without having to use a brush. I originally did use one. It just slows down the process for me now of applying the gel. So in this case here, it is also a situation where you have to kind of make sure that you're not applying too much pressure on the syringe as you are dispersing. Otherwise, you could disperse a big glob on a tooth. But that's fine too, as long as it's not getting on the gums. You can kind of use the end of the syringe to push that gel over into the other teeth. Once in a while, this syringe, the oral syringes will get a little stuck. So I would use two hands, one hand as a counterweight, and or also one hand as a kind of friction point to make sure that this isn't pushing down too far and pushing out too much gel also. All right, coverage, coverage, coverage. I try to use this up as much as I can, use up this syringe. Before I was using zero point 0.5 milliliters on a person's teeth, and it wasn't enough. So, now I use zero point 0.8 usually on a person's teeth, maybe sometimes zero point 0.9 depending on how big their teeth are. If they're smaller teeth, then yes, maybe like a zero point 0.6, zero point 0.6 milliliters of gel. But I try to use that up because I don't want it sitting there oxidizing for the 30 minutes that they are laying here before the next application. Now, if it's just a single application, then yeah, just use it all up, get it all onto the teeth. Sometimes it's maybe overkill, it's too much, but that's fine. Get it all out because you're going to throw that gel away anyway.
All right, so I'm gonna get you started with your first 30 minutes. If you feel any tingling on your gums, let me know, and I'll have to apply some more of the protective gel to those areas. Other than that, I'll just be over here checking in on you, okay?
All right, so this is the end of this part of the application process, of course. At this point, I've turned off the light. Maybe the client wants to use their phone, they're free to do so. I actually have, if you can see it here at the top, this is actually a little phone holder that actually is long enough where it reaches down and the client can use it to watch movies or, hold their phone. For the most part, they are just holding their phone. But this is where the adjustment comes in that's very important that I talk about in the lesson. If they're holding their phone, sometimes their face, or even with the fact that I use a memory foam topper on this bed, sometimes their head kind of sinks down, or sometimes it'll, if they doze off to sleep, it will turn to the side a little bit. So you are always wanting to check to make sure that this is in alignment with the mouth here, that it's not now shining on their upper lip or their nose. And I've had that happen. So you always want to make sure that this is in alignment with the mouth correctly.
All right, so I'm gonna wipe off the old gel and apply a second layer. Did you feel anything on your gums? Or are you fine? Or so a little bit up top right there? Okay.
Maybe because she knew she was being recorded in this case for this instructional video, but most of the time my clients will tell me in the middle of the session, not at the end here. They don't want to deal with the discomfort. She's gone through a whitening process before, so maybe she's used to it as well. But generally, they will make a noise or say something, or if they have their phone, text me and say, "Hey, I feel tingling." And then in that case, during the session, I would stop, turn on the light, turn off the whitening light, and then apply additional gingival. In her case, I wanted to make sure and ask for the video, but as it turns out, she did need some additional gingival in certain areas. So it's probably in that area. Um, I see a little light spot there, so it may have been some blanching there as well. But of course, I'm going to go back in and just kind of dump gingival into all of these little cracks and crevices and make a thicker layer here and cover more of the gum here. And you can always do both sides if they complain about it. If not, then, or just to be sure, but if they don't complain about it, then I wouldn't use extra gingival in areas where they're not complaining.
Gel to protect that area. So just give me a couple minutes. All right. So yeah, sometimes there's a little area here that might be exposed, but then sometimes the little gas bubbles from the oxidation of the whitening gel travels up, and sometimes it'll kind of touch the gum and make it irritate a little bit. So I'm gonna let that cure for a second, and then we're gonna wipe the old gel off.
All right, so I usually use one cotton roll each side. So I wipe, flip it over, wipe the other way. And I'll throw that cotton roll away and get the second cotton roll and do the exact same thing here. So that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, open up for me just a little bit.
Now, I was initially trained, and I believe this is wrong, was to just apply gel on top of gel, and the wiping process is very important because this gel, it has an oxidation time. The dual barrel, I've noticed where it will last for up to 30 minutes. A lot of other gels will only last for up to 20 minutes of oxidation. And so you want to get that old gel off and have just exposed teeth enamel in order to apply that new gel to. That the 30-minute session and the 60-minute session, there's definitely some differences in the level of whitening. And that initial 30 minutes opens the pores up, and then that second 30 minutes really allows for that gel to get in deeper. And you don't want to have a barrier to that, which is old gel. So make sure you get as much gel off as possible before that second application.
I'm gonna go ahead and put some more Vaseline on your lips also.
We're going to skip through this process. It's just very similar to what you've already seen, of course.
And let me know if you need anything. I'll be over here to check it back in on you, okay? All right, you have 1 minute left, and I'm gonna go ahead and get everything set up so we can get you out of here.
Okay, so let's talk about from the time that the second gel application was done to now. What have I been doing in the background? Now, if this is a 30-minute session for me, then it's what have I been doing in the background while the client is whitening for a 30-minute session. Since this is a 60-minute, I did it on that last 30 minutes. Uh, the first thing is got on my phone. I opened up my Google Photos app, and I opened up the before picture, her before smile picture, and I cropped it, and I did the normalization, some of the things that you would have learned in the lesson plan with Google Photos. I turned up the saturation, I turned down the contrast and the highlights, and I increased the pop as well. So these are things that I use with the Google Photos app. If you're using um, the iPhone Photos app, then the settings may be a little bit different. But then I'll save that photo and allow it to sync to Google Photos. And then on my tablet, I'm able to pull it up and actually see that image. And that image is ready to be shown to the client. And you'll see that in just a moment again. All right, so I'm finally grabbing the bib. And as I said, do as I say, don't do as if you've seen.
All right. So once I get everything pulled out, I'm going to give you a bottle of water and a sponge toothbrush.
I want to talk about this a little bit more, and I should have talked about this earlier, but this is a great side perspective of the client's mouth. If this braided cotton was not here, and let's say, for instance, it wouldn't fit under the person's lips for whatever reason, or it couldn't be placed here for whatever reason, then it is very important to build up a ridge here that prevents the lips from pushing down onto the gums. So sometimes it takes a couple applications. So you've done this side, you've done this side, and then maybe you are applying more gingival to build up basically a wall that keeps the lips from pushing down. Because the last thing you want is for these lips to touch this hydrogen peroxide gel, because it's going to blanch the heck out of it. And you've seen the pictures in the lesson plan. It it's ugly, and you don't want your client freaking out about it. It does take 30 minutes to go away, but sometimes it will create a blister on the lip as well. So building up some type of wall here is it takes practice. Sometimes it takes putting some gel there and shining the blue light on it to make it cure, applying a little bit more, shining the light on it. Naturally, when you apply gingival and it touches the lip, the client will naturally, as a natural reaction, pull their lip up a little bit. So that allows you to continue to build that wall up so that it prevents the lip from pushing down here.
That bottle of water is going to be used to rinse out with, and the sponge toothbrush is just going to be used to brush off the gel between, especially between your gums and lips.
All right, so what you heard was the disclosure for the bathroom time, rinsing out, brushing out, and a lot of times I would give a oral sponge to someone, and they're like, "Well, what do I do with this?" And yeah, I have to let them know, remind them, "Hey, just brush with it. Make sure you brush between the gums and the lips to make sure that there's no gel there, and so forth." Okay, so I do want to point out what I'm doing here. Okay, so I do want to point out what I'm doing here right now. I am using the Q-tip, and I put a little petroleum jelly on it, and I'm sliding it between the braided cotton and the lip. People's lips stick to the braided cotton almost 90% of the time. So you want to use some type of lubrication. I used to use a little bit of water. Sometimes if the person's mouth is filled with saliva, I'll just touch the saliva a little bit with the Q-tip and rub it there. I mean, best practice though is it's not to really do that. I would just use the petroleum jelly to really moisturize the lip and kind of pry this cotton roll away from the lip, then pushing it up at the same time to get it off the teeth. So you can see that's what I've done there. Now, what am I doing? This braided cotton roll is pretty dry, so I'm pulling the gingival off and I'm going to wipe the gel off while her lip is still pushed down. Because once you pull this out, if you don't wipe some of the gel off, her lip is just going to be exposed. It's going to come in contact with all of that whitening gel, and it still could create a blanching situation on her lip, even within the 10 seconds it takes to get everything pulled out and then for her to walk to the bathroom. So yes, I'm wiping. I take the other end. Let's wipe the top off. Great. I'm going to tell you what I just did that was wrong. So in this case here, I wiped, my finger is coming in contact with the gel. And I caught this on the video, and this is something that I've changed since then. My finger is possibly touching that gel. It's very close. Then I wipe here, and it could still touch it. It seems like it's more likely that it was touching it at the bottom. But then I reach in with that same finger, and it looks like there may be some gel on it right there on the tip. So what I do now is reach in with my middle finger to pull this cotton roll off, because I want to minimize any chances of gel getting on the lips or the gums or anything, or any globs especially. All right, so I've pulled that out. Of course, I moisturize at the top as well, top and bottom. And if you don't moisturize, that top lip can be especially tricky. And sometimes you may see the client kind of wincing and kind of like, oh, and squeezing their eyes together like, hey, that hurts a little bit as you are trying to pry the top cotton roll away from the top lip. So you have to just be very, very careful. You have to be very, very careful and cognizant of the fact that you don't want to bust that person's lip by pulling this off from here. This is almost like, if I don't know if you've ever tried to, when you were younger, stick your tongue to a cold piece of metal or when it's freezing outside and it would stick. And this basically does the same thing. If you try to pull your tongue off that cold piece of metal or something when it's cold outside, freezing outside, it will pull your skin off. And in this case, it'll do the same thing. And so you just want to make sure that that's not the case. So rubbing a Q-tip with petroleum jelly and sliding it and twisting twisting that Q-tip and just making sure that it's pried off, but also being aware of the comfort of the client.
All right, so some of that whiteness that I talked about, you are going to have a little bit of it on your gums. So just remember not to scrub that part. The whiteness goes away in about 30 minutes. And let me give you a napkin.
Okay, so I give them a napkin. I have them hold a napkin. I don't know why I didn't do it in this video, but I give my clients a napkin before I pull out any of the cheap retractor or braided cotton. So in this case, for whatever reason, because I was making this as an instructional video as well, I just literally forgot to give her a napkin. So make sure you give your clients a napkin before you start to pull everything out.
Wipe off. I'm going to pull these off.
The other thing is I actually have the client to pull off their shades before I pull everything out as well, particularly because some clients like to get up real quick, or depending on how much saliva they have in their mouth, they may be trying to run to the bathroom versus worrying about pulling those glasses off. So
Actually, I have them to pull their glasses off before I pull everything out.
Pull these off for you. And if you want to sit up here, we're going to go to this bathroom. All right.
All right, so bottle of water to rinse out with, sponge toothbrush to brush off with.
Swish with that and brush with that. All right, so if you want to come lay back down here, I'm just going to get an after picture.
After picture is very important. You want to provide some type of course, proof of the work as well. And we're going to see what the shade is now.
All right, big smile. They are white.
So if you look at the before video or the earlier video of the session, you'll see here now that this is much wider on the sides. So these darker shades that I mentioned that was a 22, you virtually won't see that now even in the video.
So you're probably about a S6, S8. All right. So if you want to sit up, and I'll show you here.
So as I mentioned, I was making sure that the picture was prepped, making sure that the color normalization was correct, and it was loaded on here while she was still on the table. And because I wanted to make sure that she was prepared to, of course, see her smile, see the before smile, and compare it to the after smile that's here in the mirror.
This is your smile when you came in beforehand. And if you smile in the mirror, wow. Yep, much, much, much brighter. So for the next 24 hours, you definitely want to stay away from anything that's red or brown, or red wine, brown liquor, coffee, cola, tea, hot sauce, barbecue sauce, teriyaki sauce, spaghetti sauce, curry, smoking for the next 24 hours. Definitely cola because the pores in your enamel are open right now. And if you drink something, especially that's acidic, it may cause sensitivity as well. But it also helps to not offset the whitening process and gives time, like I said, for your pores to close. So other than that,
I do give an audible aftercare. My system that I use actually sends out a text message with the aftercare as well with these same instructions. I don't give out cards, but hey, you may want to give out cards in your office that has the aftercare instructions on it, goodie bags, things like that. Another thing that I do is there's a Colgate 5% toothpaste that I generally would show the box of that toothpaste to my clients so they take a picture of it. And that is what I usually mention as a way to help extend the whitening. I don't offer any type of whitening at home kits in my office. It is a great revenue stream for some um, teeth whitening professionals to offer in their offices. I don't in my case.
so other than that, you are all set. Thanks for coming in.
All right, so that's the end of the video. Hopefully you are able to get additional context to the whitening process, and definitely get out there and get those smiles whiter and brighter.